She chopped the lock and smiled like she owned the whole street. I was standing 5 feet away with my morning coffee when I heard metal scrape and a pop. My chest dropped. The Jeep was my only way to work, my pride, the truck my dad left me. She didn't even knock. She just reached over the gate, pulled a bolt cutter from behind her designer purse, and walked away with it like it was a parking ticket. "You can't park that here," she said, voice loud enough for the whole block. "This is HOA property." Her tone was pure ownership, that thin, sharp kind that makes people feel small. She held the bolt cutter like a trophy, and the kids on her porch laughed. I felt my hands go cold. "I live here," I said. "That's my driveway." I tried to keep calm. You learn to keep calm when you've lived in a fight for 5 years straight. But calm doesn't stop steel. "You didn't pay HOA fees," she snapped. "You have no right." She laughed when I asked for her notice. She never showed one. Nobody else believed me at first. Neighbors started peeking from windows. A couple of them nodded toward her like she was a mayor. That's the power of a Karen with a smile and a clipboard. She climbed into the Jeep like it belonged to her and put it in reverse. The engine cough sounded loud in the quiet morning. I stepped in front of the wheel. "Don't you?" I started. She revved. The tires spun. My foot found the bumper. The metal shuddered under my palm. She screamed, "Get away. You're trespassing." Her voice changed from entitled to theatrical in a second. She pulled her phone out and started recording, holding the camera up because she knew people would eat that up. She was already creating a case. A guy in a bright HOA vest came running from behind the mailboxes like he'd been waiting for permission to do wrong. He reached for my arm. "Sir, step aside," he said. He didn't introduce himself. No badge, no name. "You can't stop her." I looked at him. He had the kind of empty eyes that follow orders they never questioned. He looked like he expected her to clap him on the back for being useful. I gave the Jeep a shove, hoping to move it off the curb. She hit the gas. My palm slid on the bumper. The Jeep jolted forward and scraped against the mailbox. I felt the world tilt. She tore down the street with the HOA guy running after her, pretending to be outraged on her behalf. Neighbors began to shout. Some called the HOA office. Some called me a troublemaker. A woman across the street yelled, "That Karen? She's the one who always wins." It felt like the block was splitting into winners and losers in one look. She parked 2 houses down and stepped out like a queen. "Arrest him!" She screamed into her phone, still recording. "Arrest him, he's violent." A man with a camera started live streaming. Social currency forms faster than the truth. I was already being painted as the criminal. My chest felt hollow. I wanted to pull off my shirt and scream the truth. That I paid for this land, that my name was on the deed, that my kids learned to ride in that Jeep. But the words got buried under her voice and the rolling noise of neighbors choosing sides. Then the HOA guy pretended to be a cop. He put on a reflective vest and called someone with a fake badge number. He used terms, dispatch, unit in progress that sounded official. He radioed like he had authority. People always believe uniforms and radios. She smiled and nodded, proud. The fake cop told me to back away. He got close. I could feel his breath, sour and timid. "Step back," he said again. The woman recording zoomed in on my face like a movie about to make me the villain. I saw the anger in my own eyes and tried to swallow it. But I wasn't as alone as I looked. My hands clenched and my phone buzzed in my pocket. I hadn't told anyone that morning about the Jeep being gone. I hadn't even called my boss. Yet my phone showed a single message, a short auto-generated ping with a location link. The Jeep's GPS had pinged. It was sending coordinates, and the message said in machine plainness unit, TF-23 vehicle moved. My stomach flipped. I had set that tracker months ago when things started getting weird around here. Small threats, anonymous notes shoved under the mat. I never guessed Karen would be the one who'd trigger it. "Where did you get that?" Karen demanded, noticing my phone lit up. Her smile dropped a bit. Her eyes narrowed like a cat betrayed. "What is that?" She sounded less sure. The HOA guy stiffened. The camera person kept filming, but he looked around for a comment. The stream had thousands of viewers now. She loved the attention, but the viewers don't always stay loyal when the plot thickens. A siren wailed faintly in the distance. It wasn't loud, and yet the sound made the air heavy again. Karen looked up, scanning the street like someone who suddenly realized they were not the center of gravity. Her breath hitched. The fake cop stuttered into his radio, his voice losing its practiced calm. "Copy, copy. We have an incoming unit." He glanced at Karen like she'd ruined a movie set. "Who called it?" she demanded, trying to push the panic away with anger. "Who called them?" Her words jittered. For the first time, she looked unsure. She had been so sure she could make the neighborhood cheer. Now the confident smile cracked. I felt a strange calm wash over me. My dad used to say, "When they try to make you small, get quiet and listen." So I listened. The GPS ping kept coming and a second message popped up. "Evidence active. Dashcam recording started." My mouth went dry. The Jeep had a dashcam and a concrete, unblinking eye. Her face went white as the light on my phone. She looked like a conjurer who had dropped her cards. The HOA guy's fake badge suddenly looked silly against the badge that was about to arrive. The street felt like a stage where the lights were about to snap on. People stopped filming themselves and looked at me. I wanted to tell them everything in one breath. That the Jeep wasn't just my ride. That it belonged to a task force my brother worked with. That it wasn't an ordinary vehicle. But those words would make me sound like a madman unless the proof came first. Proof mattered more than a voice. She reached for the Jeep keys that she had fumbled onto the hood. Her hands were shaking. I could hear cameras clicking. "You're going to jail," she said, as much to the stream as to me. The HOA guy moved in, but he hesitated. He realized there might be consequences to being the muscle for a woman who cut locks like she was pruning a hedge. A shadow fell over Karen's face from an unmarked cruiser that rolled up slow and low at the end of the block. The cruiser didn't have lights yet. Two serious men stepped out, not in dress uniforms but in plain clothes. Careful, quiet professionals who didn't need a uniform to carry authority. One of them had a slow, precise way of looking at people like he measured the truth in their posture. He spoke into a small earpiece and then into a handheld radio. "TF vehicle located. Do not approach. We have a subject-matching complaint." His voice was flat, but it hit the ground. Karen's breath hitched. The livestream chat exploded. The HOA guy looked like someone who knows he's been caught on camera taking candy out of a baby's hand. Karen dropped the bolt cutters. For the first time since she arrived, she looked small. Her shoulders rounded. Her mask slipped. Around her, the block held its breath. The Jeep's dashcam blinked red on my phone screen and my heart was a drum. I realized with a cold clarity that whoever took my Jeep had just stolen evidence, and whatever that evidence was would change everything. I swallowed. I saw the plainclothes men look at me, then at the Jeep, then at Karen. One of them nodded slightly. It was a tiny motion, but it felt like a verdict. I wanted to shout, to grab the bolt cutters back and break her teeth for stealing more than a vehicle. Instead, I said one sentence that would print in people's heads like a bruise. "You picked the wrong Jeep to steal." The words landed and made a ripple. Her smile vanished completely. The HOA guy stammered. The live stream went silent for a second as thousands of viewers waited. And then the plainclothes man walked toward us, his presence cutting the morning in two. The world narrowed to the space between his shoes and the Jeep's bumper. My phone still hummed with the dashcam upload. My heart beat like a drum. I watched Karen's face change color and thought for the first time that day that the fight was. The man in plain clothes stopped right in front of Karen, his eyes calm but sharp. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "step away from the vehicle." His tone wasn't angry, it was surgical. Karen froze, her fake confidence trembling under the weight of his voice. "You don't understand," she blurted out. He's the one trespassing. That Jeep was blocking HOA property." Her voice cracked in the middle like a cheap glass finally breaking. The officer didn't even glance at me yet. He pointed to the Jeep and said into his earpiece, "Confirm VIN number Tango Foxtrot 23. A beat of silence passed. Then a voice on the other end replied, "Confirmed. Registered under federal task force clearance." "Classified use," the crowd gasped. You could almost hear the shift. Neighbors who had been whispering suddenly pulled their kids closer, pretending they hadn't been watching. Karen's eyes widened. "What do you mean, classified?" "It's just a car," she said, her voice wobbling now. The officer turned his gaze to her, expression unreadable. "Ma'am, you just cut open a federal lock and moved a restricted vehicle without authorization. That's not HOA business. That's felony territory." The words hit harder than a punch. Even the HOA guy took a step back. He tried to laugh it off. "Sir, she's just enforcing community rules. We thought the car was abandoned." The officer raised a brow. "Abandoned?" With an encrypted GPS tracker, dual cameras, and a law enforcement code on the plate, he gestured toward the Jeep. You two better start telling the truth before this turns into a federal report. Karen's face flushed red, then pale. He put that there. He's lying. He's some kind of hacker, she stammered. She pointed at me like she could push the blame away just by stretching her arm farther. I didn't say anything. I let the silence hang. The more she talked, the worse she made it for herself. The other agent, the taller one, circled around the Jeep looking at the lock. Cut clean, he muttered. Bolt pattern matches manual cutters. She came prepared. His eyes flicked to the bolt cutters still lying in the street, then to Karen's manicured hands. You brought these yourself, ma'am. Karen's voice quivered. They were already there, she said weakly. Nobody believed her. The crowd was shifting now. Neighbors who once stood behind her now had their phones down, faces neutral, waiting to see who would win. Then, from behind me, a voice called out, "My neighbor." Old man Harris, the one who rarely spoke. "I saw her do it," he said. His voice was rough, but it cut through the air like a blade. She broke that lock herself, said she was taking back community property. Karen whipped her head around, eyes wide. "You liar," she screamed. "You weren't even outside." But the damage was done. The officer nodded at the second man, who pulled out a small body cam and clipped it on. "All right, Miss Karen," he said, formal now. "You're going to need to stay right here while we verify the details. You're not under arrest yet, but if you move, you will be." Her chin trembled. "Yet?" she echoed, voice barely a whisper. That's when the HOA guy decided to talk again, desperate to save face. We were just following orders. She told us this guy didn't belong here, said the house wasn't his anymore. We just wanted to keep the community clean." He looked at me nervously, then added, "She said she had the paperwork." The officer turned to me. "You have documentation for this property?" I nodded and pulled the folded deed from my pocket, the same one I'd started carrying after all her threats. He looked it over quickly, then nodded. "You're the legal owner. HOA has no authority to seize or damage private property." Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked around, waiting for someone to back her up. Nobody did. Even her little livestream friend had his camera lowered now. "This is harassment," she finally shouted, voice shaking. "You're all ganging up on me." The taller officer ignored her and opened the Jeep door. The dashcam light was still blinking red. He tapped his earpiece. "Upload complete. Sir, we have a visual log." Then to Karen. "We have your face, your voice, and your actions all recorded from 2 angles. You might want to stop talking." For the first time, true fear replaced arrogance in her eyes. She backed away slowly, muttering, "I didn't mean to. It was just a misunderstanding." The bolt cutters glinted near her shoes, a perfect symbol of her mistake. But the moment I thought it was over, the agent's phone buzzed. He frowned, then looked at me sharply. "Mr. James," he said, "were you aware your Jeep was part of an ongoing undercover operation?" My heart froze. "Undercover?" I repeated. He exchanged a look with his partner. "There's something you need to see. That vehicle was tagged with evidence connected to a corruption probe, one tied directly to this area's HOA board." Karen blinked, stunned. "What?" she whispered. The officer looked straight at her. "You didn't just steal a Jeep," he said. "You just interfered with a federal investigation." The air went completely still. The neighbors stared, speechless. Karen's face lost all color as she realized this wasn't just about a parking dispute anymore. And then, just as the officers began leading her toward the cruiser, one of their radios crackled, a voice on the other end saying, "Be advised. Additional HOA personnel approaching the scene. Possible interference." The taller officer looked up sharply, scanning the street. I followed his gaze. 3 black SUVs were turning the corner, each marked with the same fake community enforcement logo Karen loved flashing around. They weren't slowing down. The officer muttered, "Here we go again." And that's when I realized Karen wasn't working alone. The black SUVs rolled up slow, engines humming low, tinted windows hiding the faces inside. The whole street froze again. Even the birds went quiet. One of the agents put a hand on his holster. The other quietly shifted his stance, ready but not loud. The air turned thick, the kind of stillness that comes before something ugly. The first SUV stopped right behind the unmarked cruiser. Its door opened, and out stepped a man in a crisp navy suit and a fake badge clipped to his belt. He looked like he practiced his authority in the mirror every morning. "Step away from the vehicle," he said, voice too confident. "HOA Property Management taking over from here." The agent beside me chuckled once under his breath like he'd seen this movie before. "You sure about that?" he asked. The suited man didn't flinch. "You're trespassing on private HOA jurisdiction," he said. "We've got legal claim over this entire subdivision." He handed over a stack of papers that looked official from a distance. Shiny seal, stamped logo, all the things people trust without reading. The agent didn't even touch them. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "you called them?" Karen nodded quickly, desperate. Yes, they're with me, the HOA board. They'll tell you everything." The man in the suit smiled at her like a wolf spotting easy prey. "We'll handle this, Mrs. Parker," he said smoothly. "You did the right thing calling us." Something about the way he said right thing made my stomach twist. The taller agent finally stepped forward and took the papers. He scanned the first page, frowned, and held it up to the sunlight. "Nice try," he said quietly. "These signatures belong to a company that doesn't exist anymore. Shut down 6 years ago in a fraud case." The man's smirk didn't fade. "You don't want to get in the middle of this, officer," he said, voice low. "We've got friends in city planning, code enforcement, even county sheriff's office. Walk away and this stays simple." The agent shook his head. "I don't walk away from felonies dressed up as paperwork." The man's jaw twitched. "Big mistake." He raised his hand slightly, a signal, and 2 more men stepped out of the SUVs. Big guys, black gloves, no badges. Not cops, not officers, just muscle. They spread out slowly, forming a half circle between me and the agents. Karen stepped back, whispering, "Wait, what are you doing?" But they didn't answer her. That's when I realized even she wasn't part of their inner circle. She'd been used. A loud distraction with a phone camera. The first muscle guy moved toward the Jeep. "We'll be taking that now," he said. His tone was casual, but his hand rested on something under his jacket. The taller agent lifted a hand calmly. "You touch that vehicle," he said, "and you'll be touching federal property." The man laughed, short and sharp. "Federal? Prove it." The agent didn't move. He just tilted his phone toward the man's chest. A small green light blinked. "Dashcam's live to a secure server. You're being streamed to a federal database." The laughter stopped. The shorter agent, the one who'd first arrived, leaned toward me and whispered, "Stay behind me. They're bluffing heavy, but we can't fire first unless they act." His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. I could see the math running behind his eyes. How many of them? How many of us? How fast this could go wrong? Then, out of nowhere, Karen snapped. "Stop it!" she yelled, stepping between them. "I just wanted him gone." "I didn't mean—" The man in the suit grabbed her arm and pulled her back roughly. "You've done your part," he hissed. "Now stay quiet." Her face went pale. "You're hurting me," she whispered. The taller agent's voice turned cold. "Let her go." "Stay out of this," the man sneered. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh," the agent said, stepping closer. "I think I do." He pulled a small badge from his pocket. Silver, scratched, heavy. "Task Force 23, Federal Land and Asset Crimes Division. This is our operation and you just walked into it." The man in the suit blinked once, then twice, and his voice lost a bit of its shine. This property isn't federal." The agent's tone didn't change. "No, but the money you laundered through fake HOA fines? That's interstate fraud. You've been on our radar for months." The muscle guys looked uncertain now. One lowered his hand. The other shifted his stance, eyes darting between the agent and the Jeep. Karen whispered, "Fraud?" Like she couldn't believe the word even existed near her. The agent turned to me and said quietly, "Your Jeep wasn't tagged by accident. We used it to trace their movement. You just helped us expose them faster." Everything clicked at once, the GPS tracker, the dashcam upload, the encrypted ping. The Jeep was bait, and Karen had been the one foolish enough to grab it. The man in the suit's voice cracked. "You can't prove," the taller agent interrupted. "We can. The dashcam saw everything, and so did the live stream your friend started." He pointed at the guy holding the phone, who froze, realizing he'd just filmed federal evidence. The man in the suit took one step back, eyes flicking toward his SUV, maybe thinking he could still run. But before he could move, a deep voice came from the street's end. "Don't even think about it. 4 more unmarked cruisers rolled up, lights flashing this time, sirens cutting through the still air. Uniformed officers poured out, guns low but ready. The HOA muscle dropped their hands immediately. The man in the suit just stared, breathing hard. Karen stood frozen, her perfect suburban world collapsing right in front of her. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know who they really were." The agent turned to her. "No," he said. "But you helped them, and that means you're part of it." She shook her head, tears forming now, her arrogance melting into panic. "I swear I just wanted to make him leave. I thought—" The officer cut her off. "You thought wrong." He motioned to a uniformed cop. Read her rights. Karen looked at me then, eyes wide, broken, like she finally understood what line she had crossed. For the first time, she didn't have anything left to say. But just as they started handcuffing her, one of the officers' radios cracked again. A sharp voice came through, urgent. "Be advised, suspect number 2 on the board just fled the HOA headquarters, with the main server drives." The taller agent's expression hardened. "They're trying to erase the files." He turned to me. "James, we need your help. The only vehicle fast enough to reach them before they hit the highway." "Is your Jeep?" I blinked. "You want me to drive it?" He tossed me the keys. "You said it was yours, right?" And for the first time that day, I smiled. They handed me the keys like they were passing a torch. The taller agent's eyes met mine for the smallest moment, a hard look that said, "Drive like you mean it." I climbed in, felt the familiar weight of the wheel, and for the first time that day, the Jeep felt like mine again. The engine growled, the dashcam hummed, and the street behind me was a messy tableau of sirens, cuffs, and stunned neighbors. Karen's face was small in the rearview mirror, a portrait of someone who'd confused cruelty for power. "Go," the agent said, voice tight. "They hit the highway 3 exits ago. We have probable route." He handed me a tablet with a blue line pulsing on a map. "We'll guide you. Keep your lights low. We don't want a road war." I nodded. My hands were steady. The Jeep had always been more than steel to me. It carried my kids' laughter, my father's lessons, and now, a chance to stop thieves from erasing what we fought for. Traffic folded and the city blurred. The taller agent rode in the passenger seat, headset in, eyes scanning cameras and feeds like a man reading a very bad book. The shorter agent piped in through the tablet, voice calm but urgent. They split. One headed for the old storage yard off Route 9. The other 2 took the river road. "We got units on both," the route pulsed. We pushed harder. My neighbor's live stream from earlier was still active. The chat that had gossiped and gnashed turned into a real-time map of witnesses, and they were sharing anything they saw. Strangers pointed from overpasses. People shouted directions from gas stations. For the first time, the whole neighborhood's gossip turned into a weapon for the right side. It felt good and strange. We cut through red lights with permission over the radio, not reckless but with purpose. The taller agent glanced at me and said quietly, "If they delete those drives, everything goes dark. It's not just money. It's people who put their trust in those files. We can't let them walk." I felt the weight of that. This wasn't personal revenge anymore. This was about truth, and the people who thought the law was a suggestion. The storage yard smelled like oil and old plywood. Metal doors lined the rows like teeth. We hit it hard, agents crushing the gate, a few uniforms backing us up, flashlights carving shapes in the dark. The man in the suit tried to bolt toward a black SUV, his face a mask of panic. One agent took him down with an easy move that looked like it had been practiced a long time. 2 muscle guys tried to run with a crate. They didn't get far. The taller agent yelled, "Hands where we can see them!" And the yard answered with thuds of bodies hitting concrete. They found the main server drives shoved into a duffel behind a stack of insulation. One of the uniformed officers pulled them out like a prize and cradled them, careful. The drives were warm, like they'd been used minutes ago. The taller agent set up a secure laptop and started a live hash read while a tech on the phone streamed every checksum to the cloud. The muscle guys swore and sputtered. The man in the suit looked at the drives and then at the taller agent, and something in his face gave away the truth. He knew the house of cards had begun to fall. One by one, names came up on the tablet. HOA board members, contractors, a county official who liked to sign things that other people paid for. The taller agent's jaw tightened. "They've been laundering funds, hiding developer kickbacks, in a mess of fake fines," he said, voice low. "They tried to rewrite every record they could. This would have wiped so many complaints and evidence." I remembered neighbors who had begged for repairs and got nothing. Seniors hit with fines they couldn't pay. This was their answer. They put the man in the suit and cuffs. He kept yelling about legal counsel and how we wouldn't understand complex contracts. The taller agent looked at him and said, "You sold your conscience for a stamp and a ribbon." It landed like a verdict. They read the man his rights. Karen, now quietly shaking and wrapped in a blanket, watched from the squad car. Someone had brought her coffee, not sympathy. She had a look that told me she finally understood what being small felt like, not because someone shrank her, because the truth made her small. Back at the neighborhood, the live feeds were a storm. The dashcam footage from the Jeep had already uploaded and started looping. Her bolt cutters, her laugh, the way she hit the gas. People who had nodded at her earlier now watched silently, some with guilt, some with relief. In the end, the most damning thing wasn't just the footage. It was the pattern the drives showed. A map of theft disguised as rules. They held a press briefing the next morning on the cul-de-sac. The taller agent stood behind a podium, Task Force 23 on the table, and the cameras from every local outlet leaned in. He explained, steady and spare, that the HOA ring had siphoned funds, forged documents, and used intimidation to silence neighbors. He named names. He said there would be charges for fraud, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. The man in the suit, the muscle, and several board members were in custody. Karen's name appeared in filings as an accomplice who had actively participated in seizing property. The courtroom would decide her fate. Justice, slow and certain, had begun to show up like dawn. Neighbors came forward with boxes of receipts, texts, and photos. Old Mr. Harris handed over video of her cutting the lock weeks earlier on a different street. The people who had been silent became witnesses. My kids watched the news, eyes wide, and I felt a cutoff of relief in my chest. Relief that this thing we had endured was finally not invisible. They returned my Jeep with a formal apology on paper and a handshake that felt small compared to what was taken. The title was checked again and again, legal teams whispering. The man who'd been hired to manage the HOA's books looked at me with a hollow face and said, "We're sorry." The apology didn't fix the late nights or the fear, but it was a start. At the hearing, they played the dashcam footage and the live stream, and the courtroom breathed as if it were watching a movie. The judge looked at the defendants and then at the neighbors who had come to the stand trembling but brave. The penalties were real, the forfeiture significant. Developers who had thought they could buy silence found their accounts frozen. The HOA's shell companies were dissolved. Assets were seized to repair the neighborhood. Fences fixed, roofs mended, a fund set up for the elderly. Law finally, doing the thing it's supposed to, make people right. Karen got community service fines and was barred from serving on any neighborhood board. The man in the suit faced serious charges. The muscle guys pled guilty. Some of the board members are still in court. The files on those drives named people who had thought they'd never be named. When it quieted, the neighborhood felt different. People stopped pretending they were too busy to speak. Porch visits turned into meetings about real fixes, about helping the old woman on Elm Street with her roof. I walked the block with my kids on a Saturday, and someone I hadn't spoken to before handed me a plate of cookies. "For your kid," she said, and smiled like she meant it. At night, when I watered the small strip of lawn by the driveway, I thought about my father. How he told me to keep proof and to keep my head. I thought about how close we were to losing more than a Jeep. Our sense of safety, our trust. The whole thing taught me that community is a living thing. It can be used for greed or it can protect. We help tilt it back. On the news, the taller agent said something that stuck with a lot of people. Power isn't in a badge or a clipboard. It's in accountability. That line trended. People repeated it in neighborhood groups and at kitchen tables. That night, my daughter climbed into the Jeep and put her hands on the steering wheel like she was driving someplace important. She looked at me and said, "Daddy, are we safe now?" I ruffled her hair and smiled. "We're getting there," I said, "and we'll keep getting there." I learned something else too. That revenge that's controlled by law and truth is sweeter than any private payback. We didn't break bones or burn houses. We brought light. We made sure the record showed what they had done. We let courts and cameras do the dirty work. The real power was not in me smashing something back. It was in evidence, in witnesses, in one small Jeep that became louder than their lies. A month later, the HOA's office was empty, its signs removed. The community center got new funding from seized accounts and volunteers. People who had felt invisible began to help each other. Old grudges softened. Karen moved away quietly, the sort of exit that leaves a hole in the neighborhood that no one wants to fill. When I lock the Jeep at night, I glance at the driveway light and feel something like pride and like a wound that is healing. I never wanted to be a hero. I wanted my home. But sometimes, and when the right moment comes, you find out that standing up for yourself helps everyone. I didn't fight for this country to be told I couldn't park in my own driveway. I fought for a life where my kids could sleep without fear. You picked the wrong Jeep to steal, I had said that morning. The words had landed like a stone. What I didn't know then was how that stone would roll, down a hill, break windows, and finally hit the people who thought money could buy silence. The community felt quieter now, but stronger. The kids played longer. The mail carrier whistled. And when my daughter asked me again, weeks later, "Daddy, will bad people come back?" I looked at the stars and said, "Not if we keep watching each other."